Hi-Fi Rush was a game that no one had ever made before, until Tango Gameworks came along. It's an action game that combines the stylish combat of Devil May Cry with a rhythm game the likes of DDR, Parappa the Rapper, and Guitar Hero. A game where the entire world runs on the pulsing percussion of Nine Inch Nails, The Prodigy, Zwan, and others. It saw the player take up the role of Chai, a young man who's been turned into a walking experiment all by accident. His arm is replaced with a robotic replica, and an MP3 player has swapped places with his heart, and now he sees the world move to the beat of his own. Pistons pulse, doors jolt, and platforms all move distinctly to the rhythm that flows through your controller. You literally feel the beat as you hit your attacks to the timing of the music and juggle inputs to the rhythm as you destroy robots and bosses in your path. It's a game unlike any other I've ever played, and it has earned its place in the upper echelon of gaming's greatest hits. All because of how it executes its own concept with brilliance, while making sure to not outstay its welcome. But like most other games, this isn't one that was developed overnight. Hi-Fi Rush was a concept that game director of Tango Gameworks, John Johannes, was envisioning for over 10 years. He wanted to make a game that took inspiration from the music that he grew up with in the 90s and 2000s, and he was unwavering in his vision of the final game. John worked alongside lead programmer Yuji Nakamura for over a year to refine the concept into something that would be presentable to Bethesda, the company that owned them at that time. For the longest time, it was just the two of them, workshopping the development through trial and error, eventually making something they could be proud of. John had a vision for this game and was determined to see it through because he knew it was something special. As development moved forward, everyone else started to catch on. Everyone else began to understand that this game was indeed special. The early prototypes for Hi-Fi Rush were passed around internally through Bethesda before they could even make the pitch. As soon as people got their hands on it, they were amazed. This is awesome. What is this? I would buy this right now, whatever this is. The two had made something special, and that got people talking. That gave the two the power they needed to push forward through the pitch with Bethesda management and get the project greenlit. And so, a team was put together. But how do you put together a team for something that had never really been made before? An action game dictated by a rhythm game underneath? In an interview with Xbox Wire, John Johannes said, quote, "I didn't really create the team. It was just the people who were available. And all the people who were available had literally no experience making a game like this. So it's not like, I'm going to need him and him and him because they know how to do this and they're going to make it happen." It was more like, here's what we want to do, and everyone's like, I have no idea how to do this. Most of the first reactions were, we don't know how to do this. This is totally impossible, end quote. Thankfully, Tango Gameworks is a primarily Japanese developer. So chances are, if you make games in Japan, somebody close by probably has experience with rhythm games. It's the home of DDR, Taiko, Beatmania, and so many others. You could say it was a happy accident that the team that was eventually put together had some experience with rhythm games. It was a grueling dev process because, like it was mentioned earlier, no one had made a game like this on the team before. Most people at Tango were accustomed to creating high-fidelity survival horror games. Many people on the team were also not musically trained, so they had their work scrutinized by John. Does the battle match the BPM? Is there enough moving parts in the background to get the rhythm across? And overall, is it fun to play? The game was in development for a long time. Over the course of 5 years, the concept took form and was developed into something with a pure shine. However, this wasn't a small game. This is something that could have only been developed by the hands of that team that shaped it during those hard 5 years. Many people took on different roles in development, and everything had to be examined with a fine-tooth comb. It was a tough job. But this is what these developers do. They put in the hard work to make something wholly unique, something that no one has ever played before. These developers sacrifice their time, energy, and social life to make sure they put in their best work possible to make a game they would want anyone to play. In the same Xbox Wire interview, audio director for Hi-Fi Rush, Shuichi Kobori, said, quote, "People would bring in their own best work to help them out. And then because they're so creative and we wanted to help them out, they would want to bring in their best work to put into their prototype. And then other people would see that awesome work that somebody else did and they'd say, okay, I want to make sure I bring in something as good or even better, right? So the inspiration kind of like fed off each other, and then back in itself, this strong synergy of everybody trying to bring their best thing to the table to help them out. That's still continuing today, where people are bringing in new ideas for things on how to improve a project," end quote. Needless to say, the team worked hard until the game sparkled. And if you've played it yourself, you know just how polished the game is. Rarely any bugs showcase, and it feels like we actually got a finished project. And with that, development came to a close and the game was ready to see the world. The team was initially going to do a short marketing campaign, but they had so much confidence in the game that they shadow dropped it during an Xbox showcase. Everyone who saw the game in action was instantly pulled in by the charm and craftsmanship on display, myself included, so I decided to renew my sub to Game Pass and check it out for myself. And oh my god, the feeling it gave me reminded me of playing Sly Cooper on the PS2, a franchise I still think of dearly to this day. This game, made by this incredibly talented group of developers at the top of their craft, trying something new, took me back to a time where games were simpler, where games were funny and interesting and inventive. It reminded me that games can still be like the ones I played growing up, and not everything needed to be a money-grubbing live service cash cow. And I think many people agreed with me. When the game released, it resonated with a lot of people. It garnered incredibly high review scores across the board and reached over 3 million players on Game Pass alone. Aaron Greenberg, VP of Xbox Games Marketing at Microsoft, tweeted out, quote, "Hi-Fi Rush was a breakout hit for us and our players in all key measurements and expectations. We couldn't be happier with what the team at Tango Gameworks delivered with this surprise release," end quote. And as if that wasn't enough, the awards season hit.
And the Game Award goes to Hi-Fi Rush.
And the BAFTA goes to Hi-Fi Rush.
Boom, best audio design. Boom, best audio. Boom, BAFTA for animation. Oh my god. Tango went from show to show, raking in the awards. Pretty big deal when you release the same year as Baldur's Gate 3. They were really flying high off their success with Hi-Fi Rush, and it was clear that they had really grown as a studio while developing the game. And they deserve every single one of these awards. Full stop. During the Xbox Wire interview, the Tango team was asked what's next for them as developers. Yuji Nakamura stated, quote, "Everybody here has now gained the experience of making a non-horror genre game, meaning that we can make other genres. And that confidence has definitely been built up within the studio. It changed the attitude of people here, and in regards to like, hey, what else can we make? We can challenge ourselves to make something new that is not what the older themes of what Tango used to be. So we're looking forward to what we can do in the future. We're not sure what that is yet, but it has created this attitude of like, let's look forward and what new challenges can we challenge ourselves to," end quote. However, you probably know where I'm going with this. On May 7th, 2024, not even 1 year after the release of Hi-Fi Rush, Microsoft announced that Tango Gameworks would cease development and the studio would be closed alongside Arcane Austin and Alpha Dog Studios. All of these were studios owned by parent company ZeniMax/Bethesda. Anyone in their right mind would be asking, why? Why did a studio with such a hit game get shit-canned along with the other studios? Why, with so many talented, award-winning developers, did the studio have to close? A few days after closing, game project manager at Tango Gameworks, Kazuaki Igashira, took to Twitter with the picture of the awards of excellence given to the team as recognition for their hard work and dedication, with the caption, "Not enough?" And, well, the answer could never be more clear. These awards were never enough, because they don't mean anything to Microsoft, and they never did, because Microsoft never cared about the artistry of their games, or the blood, sweat, and tears that went into making such a unique game that had never been done before. They never cared about a game that could only be made by developers at the top of their craft. They never cared because it didn't make as much money as Call of Duty. So, I guess let me unpack that last statement. After a long legal battle that began all the way back in January of 2022, Microsoft finally became the owners of Activision Blizzard in October of 2023. This acquisition was primarily for the ownership of the Call of Duty and Candy Crush franchises, as well as the entirety of the Blizzard catalog. Needless to say, that's a pretty big deal. Call of Duty has been the highest selling game franchise for over 15 years at this point, and Candy Crush has made over $20 billion since its release in 2012, and neither of these series are stopping anytime soon. These games are huge, big deals. Following the acquisition, Microsoft saw an increase in Xbox company profits of 62% over last year, with 61% coming from Activision Blizzard specifically. This frankly absurd bump in profits is giving the impression to majority shareholders that this is how profits are going to be for the company going forward. These shareholders are going to expect a 62% increase year over year from the Xbox division for the rest of time, because that's what they saw last year. Never mind that we just came out of a quarantine that affected the entire world and kept people inside spending money on games as a way to stay entertained while the outside was falling apart. And when Microsoft is eventually unable to reach that past performance standard, the stock will begin to lose value. Let's use this as an example. It's like when your boss gives you a project that he says will take 3 months to complete. Turns out it wasn't that hard, and you completed it in 4 days instead. You tell your boss that you finished it already, so now your boss expects that to be the new standard going forward for your work ethic. You've created an exaggerated performance bump, and now it's the new norm. And if there's one thing that's completely known in the stock market, it's this: past performance is no guarantee of future results. So Xbox is in this position now of, shit, how do we cut costs and generate more profit for shareholders to match that 62% expectation? Well, that seems like a pretty easy solution to Xbox management. Close down all the studios that are underperforming, in big quotation marks, so we can focus our efforts on the studios that matter most, the ones that generate the most profit. Head of Xbox Game Studios at Microsoft, Matt Booty, said so himself, that Xbox is closing these studios to, quote, prioritize high-impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games and beloved worlds, end quote. Meaning that they want to put more emphasis on games like the lackluster Starfield that released to middling reception, and the yearly Call of Duty that will require more workers for the cosmetic Battle Pass mill. As a result, we lose all the talent, the teams, and the brilliant minds behind the development of these games in the first place, so they can continue to pump out slop like battle passes, cosmetics, and microtransactions that aren't really so micro anymore. So let's do some math for Microsoft real quick. These battle passes in general can cost upwards of $20 to $30 per season, and each battle pass only lasts 4 months. You can get an extra $70 by releasing a game that consists only of reused multiplayer maps from a 15-year-old game, then add $30 per season a year. That's $160 per player per year if they buy everything. Now add up all the extra cosmetic packs in the store that Microsoft gets a cut of every time someone buys in-game credits, and considering how many people buy COD each year, yeah, that adds up fast. Minimum effort, maximum value. Now let's compare it to Hi-Fi Rush, a relatively niche action rhythm game that took 5 years to develop, cost probably a good chunk of change to make, and then doesn't get marketed and slapped straight to Game Pass with only word of mouth to help spread the good word. A Game Pass subscription can cost someone anywhere from $1 to $14 a month to subscribe to, or you can buy it full price for $30. From a shareholder perspective, that's losing out on well over $100 in potential value per sale. Now you start to see the big picture, and frankly, it's not looking good. What's even funnier is how the Xbox brand management keeps trying to switch this and flip the narrative on the brand itself being not very valuable, apparently. They start to blame these studio closures on stagnant growth, like the industry isn't growing, apparently. In a recent interview, head of Xbox Sarah Bond stated, quote, "When we looked at those fundamental trends, we feel a deep responsibility to ensure that the games we make, the devices we build, the services we offer are there through moments, even when the industry isn't growing. The news we announced earlier this week of the closings are an outcome of that and our commitment to making sure that the business is healthy for the long term," end quote. She says this while Microsoft themselves are starting to move away from the console business altogether in an attempt to get a slice of the streaming service pie. You can now play Xbox games on your phone, on your computer, and your smart TV. Even though you can still buy a box that goes under your TV, that's not what they want you to do, because that saves them on manufacturing. So, which is it? Are these games underperforming? Is it the brand's stagnant growth that's the issue? Are they firing to focus on other things? Are AAA games getting too expensive to make? What's the point of buying all these studios if they can't even make the games they were bought to make? Hell, what's the point of buying these studios if they're just going to be unfairly compared to one of the highest grossing media franchises in the world? Well, maybe these are all questions Microsoft should be asking themselves. All of this inconsistent communication is even more strange when you consider how Xbox management has been posting about the situation. In a brilliant example of being unable to read the room, in a recent Xbox town hall, Matt Booty has said, quote, "We need smaller games that give us prestige and awards," end quote. He said this the day after closing Tango Gameworks. And in another example of being completely tone deaf, President of Xbox Sarah Bond posted on LinkedIn, quote, "Welcome to our office," end quote, with a photo of some empty Xbox offices on the same day the 3 studios were shuttered. Real classy stuff there, guys. So let's talk about trust. Trust is earned when words meet actions. However, while Microsoft says one thing, they do something else. Every time Phil Spencer goes on a media circuit to do a presentation or a podcast, it's all PR. I don't think anyone doubted this per se, but now it's dead obvious that these are just words to cover his own ass of any accountability. Last year, after Redfall released to very poor reception, Phil Spencer began the media circuit yet again. In an interview with Kinda Funny Games, he said, quote, "I want to give the teams the creative platform to go and push their ability, push their aspirations," end quote. In his own words, he wants to give developers the opportunity to flex their creative muscles and create something amazing. But when all the nuts are on the table and he has the difficult decision to lay off as many people as possible and mopes and hides because he's so ashamed of the decision, it's all performative. That's not a real leader. A real leader would defend his staff in the face of budget cuts. A real leader would carry the brunt of any mistakes from people lower on the totem pole, because that's his job. If you really believe in the vision of Xbox Game Studios, you would be fighting for it with everything in your power. But instead, he pulls the trigger, then hides. He's been dead silent since the studio layoffs began, despite being so proud of them. Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, and the rest of the Xbox management team are cowards and liars. They claim to love games and want to support developers,
doing what they do best by cultivating them and giving them the resources they need to thrive, all while taking the brunt of any financial woes that may ensue. When you have that much money, you should be able to experiment and fail and ultimately let creators create, because that's what you bought them for. It's okay if Redfall sucked ass when it came out because you're Microsoft. You can stand to have a failure every now and then. When you have so many creative teams behind you, that's bound to happen. Not everything is a banger, and yet, at the same time, they will happily throw any developer who cannot meet any arbitrary financial goals under the bus. If there was any trust left with the Xbox management team, it's all but gone now. They never wanted talent. They wanted the next Call of Duty. I'm sure that all studios under the Xbox brand are now being compared to the new golden goose of the company, Activision Blizzard. They will want every game released these days to be a mass market, consumer milking products with no identity or innovation, whether they say it out loud or not. Because that's what the shareholders want, and what the shareholders want, they will get. That is what's being shown loud and clear. I can foresee the same closures happening to other Microsoft-owned studios as well. Double Fine, Ninja Theory, Obsidian, and Exile Entertainment. As far as I can tell, all of these studios are considered expendable to Microsoft at this point because pedigree isn't enough. Awards aren't enough. Games aren't enough anymore. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how fun they are. No, it's about how much they make. And if the line goes down, there will be hell to pay. Every following layoff only helps to put the Xbox brand even more in the green. Doesn't matter how much they paid the developers to begin with. They're all expendable in the quest for bigger number. The line must go up. So say goodbye to good games from Xbox. Say goodbye to all the developers that created something worth playing. To all the developers that put their lives into creating the art that you enjoy. Say goodbye to John Johannes, to Yuji Nakamura, to Suichi Kobori, and everyone else who worked at Tango. To everyone who worked at Arcane Austin and Alpha Dog Games. Because let's be honest, when a new Snoop Dogg themed skin pack for your Call of Duty character can make more profits than an award-winning single-player action game, the choice was never more obvious, was it? Oh man, I know this video has been pretty somber, to say the least, but I want you to know that not everything is doom and gloom in the gaming industry. I personally believe that indie games are thriving and have never been more amazing than they are now. Just this year alone, we've seen amazing games such as Manor Lords, Pacific Drive, Hades 2, and my personal favorite game of the year choice, Balatro. I would encourage you to find solace in developers and publishers that care about the games they make and aren't beholden to the whims of shareholders in search of high profits. Yes, gaming is a business, but at the end of the day, it's a business that lives or dies based on the creatives behind it. So go out and play some good games. Support publishers that care for their developers. And most of all, go out and thank a game developer today for the hard work they do. Without them, we wouldn't have the games we play today. They're the people that make the games, not the spineless hacks who decide who gets to make them in the first place. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up or thumbs down depending on how you felt, and please leave a comment below about your thoughts on the topic as a whole. Xbox management is still doing damage control over the situation, so I'm curious to see what new information comes to light in the coming days. This has been Testing Triangles. Thank you for watching.